restricted kinematic or a fair number of people. How many are doing mechanical alignment? Right. So I think this talk will benefit both the groups of people. We're looking at more complex situations, extraarticular deformities, which in itself is difficult to understand. And then if we bring in kinematics here, it may be even more challenging. So Suhas brought this up in the morning, and this is a very important thing which we have to understand. We have to look at the soft tissues, morphology and alignment, and these cannot be done in isolation. They have to be looked together with each other, and we must create an optimal rectangular envelope in extension and create a little bit of lateral laxity in flexion through our surgery. And we must throw out a lot of concepts which have been ingrained in us through the mechanical philosophies, because they have said that okay, your FFD has to be corrected in a particular way, or this has to be done in this way. So just keep that, don't negate it, keep it at the side, but look at it in a different way. We acknowledge that the meniscal and ACL function are not present in any replaced knee, and that is why there is an improvement in the design of implants, which you are looking at through the medial pivot designs, the single radius femoral component, and increase in the trochlear angle to accommodate for varying anatomies of the trochlea. So this is what is happening. And we have all this alignment spectrum which has been well alluded to, and we have published our own strategy which I will be talking about as we go on. For kinematic alignment, personally I feel that there need to be some limits, because some of the cases which we see in our part of the world are really bad, and if you want to really try and figure out what is the pre-arthritic alignment in that valgus or varus knee, I think Vikram will be able to do that. I will not be able to do it. So I think I would stick to something which is more which we can manage. Coming to extraarticular deformity, we have congenital causes, we have metabolic causes, we have traumatic situations, we have the surgical situations which can cause extraarticular deformity, and you can have stress fractures which will present in these grotesque forms. And with severe deformities, I must admit that trying to figure out what the pre-arthritic alignment in that patient was is really a challenge. It's not that easy. But one thing you must remember, the femur is the north star. That's what has been talked about again and again and again. What we have found is even in these severe deformities, the femur is relatively okay. The lateral condyle is almost always having pristine cartilage. The medial side will just have a little bit of cartilage wear or a millimeter of bony wear. The questions: can we get intraarticular correction? Does the procedure need staging, or can be done at one stage when you need osteotomy and TKR? And the landmark paper here is the one by Wolf and Hungerford, and the paper which has been published from Wang et al., and these were the guiding lights for us. But now we have the paper from Wendy Tolley which talk about the kinematic options, where they say that the unrestricted kinematic alignment is a choice but may not always be desirable. Hybrid technique is the way which has been recommended, where they do employ the principles of restricted kinematic alignment, and some amount of intraarticular compensation and soft tissue balancing is done to get an acceptable situation. And in very severe deformities, you may have to do an osteotomy, and in these situations it is possible to do an unrestricted kinematic alignment. What are the problems? There is distortion of anatomic landmarks, difficulty using conventional instrumentation, obliteration of board canals, and there is always a possibility of lurking infection. We must assess the principles of deformity assessment. We must look at whether the deformity is in the femur, whether it's in the tibia, or it's a combined deformity. Is it an isolated uniplanar deformity in the coronal, sagittal, or rotational planes, or a biplanar or a triplanar deformity? And what is the cora for this deformity? And you have to separate the principles with femur, tibia, what is the degree of deformity, and location of the knee. So we'll see some of them. So if you see the location of the tibial deformity will have influence both in extension and flexion gaps, but the femoral deformity influences both only the extension gap. So this has a significant impact on how you will balance the particular knee. You must always do a full length X-ray to figure out what is there, and the opposite knee will give us what was the pre-arthritic alignment for that particular patient if you're planning for a kinematic thing. General principle, smaller the deformity away from the knee joint, lesser is its impact on the knee joint. Closer the deformity to the knee, more is the impact. So if your deformity is very close to the knee in the supracondylar area or in the proximal tibia, then that will have maximum impact on the joint. But if you have a deformity which is in the subtrochanteric area, that will have less impact on the knee joint, and you can calculate that. So this is a case with a subtrochanteric femoral varus. You can see that the mechanical axis is actually not much affected at the knee joint, and a case with a supracondylar deformity which has got a large mechanical axis deviation into varus because of significant impact on the knee joint. What are the principles for intraarticular correction for extraarticular deformity? If you make your distal resection of the femur, it must not violate the collateral ligament. You can make permissible varus cuts or valgus cuts within plus or minus 5-degree envelope, as has been talked about in restricted kinematic, and this will bring a lot of cases for hybrid technique of kinematic resurfacing in these cases. Less than 20 degrees of coronal and sagittal plane deformity can usually be corrected, and usually you can see like this in the femur there is a coronal varus deformity, and you see that although the perpendicular is cutting at the above the level of the collateral ligament, you can adjust it by increasing the varus on the distal femoral cut and bring the cut below the level of collateral ligament and balance this knee without having to do a complex some sort of a osteotomy procedure. What happens when you do it? There is a lateral laxity which is more, and that needs to be addressed at the time of surgery. Even if you balance it by the bone cuts to a large extent, some amount of soft tissue release will need to be done in order to these situations. The femoral deformity affects only the extension gap. The trapezoidal gap in extension is not acceptable, and it may require unique and innovative release or ligament retightening procedures like a medial epicondylar slide or a lateral up tightening procedure, and these are all acceptable, and this can be minimized by the use of some sort of coronal sagittal plane adjustments of the bone cuts. So this is a case example. You can see varus as well as hyperextension. The problem with hyperextension is you will have limits on how much you can flex the femoral component. Generally, if you want to flex more than 10 degrees, it will have impact on the longevity of the implant. Therefore, the flexion must be less than 10 degrees. So this is a post-operative X-ray with a 5-degree varus cut on the femur, neutral tibial cut, and we were able to flex the femoral component to 10 degrees and were able to balance this complex situation using a PS knee. Sometimes if the deformity is much more than 20 degrees, you may require a simultaneous femoral osteotomy and total knee arthroplasty. But even these cases we can manage using technology assistance like CAS or robotics. This is a case of mine which we did 10 years back. We used CAS to do 4 degrees of varus on the femur, 2 degrees varus on the tibia to accept an overall varus alignment of 6 degrees. Those days I did not know whether that knee would last, and this is a 10-year follow-up of this patient, which is doing pretty well, and the patient did not require anything doing. Maybe the lateral side has opened up a little bit, but I think the patient is pain-free and doing pretty well. And this we did when we did not have understanding of the philosophy. Now the robotics has completely revolutionized the way we do this surgery. We can actually do a 3D mapping, calibrate the gap tightness, assess the amount of laxities, and you can see here that we are putting varus which is very accurately reproducible, and the residual laxities or tightness are balanced using a tightening or a loosening osteotomy of the epicondyle. And here you can see that I put in a cruciate retaining knee, and this patient at 4-year follow-up is doing extremely well. Similarly, the valgus deformity also can be addressed using the robotics, and we've used just a PS knee by manipulating the bone cuts and doing some appropriate soft tissues as recommended. And that's the final scanogram of this patient, doing pretty well. For the tibial deformity, again the prerequisites remain similar, but up to 30 degrees of deformity can be managed with intraarticular correction. But the key here is that the axis of the tibia must be cutting some part of the tibial plateau. If the axis goes off, then that may be more difficult to balance intra-op. The second thing is, if you have a deformity which is very close to the ankle, then that may warrant correction, because the ankle mechanics are completely different, and if a deformity is very close to the ankle, although if the knee is not affected, you will still have to correct it. Some examples where you can see that there is metaphyseal varus here, It's not an intraarticular deformity, but you can do a varus tibial cut here in order to balance these knees, and you can get away even in very complex situations by increasing your acceptability to a larger range rather than plus or minus 3. You work between 4-degree valgus and 6 degrees of varus. Similarly, the valgus situations also can be addressed using CAS and the permissible valgus cuts here. So the overall alignment of 5-degree valgus was accepted in this case, and with even with that we will still have to do a lateral epicondylar osteotomy. Case of high tibial osteotomy managed with a varus tibia and cruciate retaining implants. The take home, preoperative assessment and planning is important. Mechanical alignment standards do not apply in these situations. You will get away by trying to work with a combination of bony adjustment along with soft tissue releases. By and large, deformities in coronal plane up to 20 degrees in the femur and 30 degrees in the tibia can be corrected intraarticularly, and sometimes innovative soft tissue balancing techniques may be needed when attempting intraarticular correction. Thank you.